Hello and welcome to the spoiler-filled deep dive discussion video on Unsane. Now, the concerns that I had about this movie, it's primarily the fact that it calls into question, should a person be hesitant to seeking out mental help, or should they be hesitant to, if they do seek out mental help, to withhold the entire truth of how they're feeling out of fear of this situation happening? Within the movie, it definitely made it seem like it didn't seem, it flat out told that this is a malevolent company, at least one without scruples, that is seeking to hold people just for the sake of insurance money. But having that as an element on the screen, it calls into, that is entirely possible. It's not like our private private health facilities in general are entirely scrupulous. The quality of healthcare in the United States here is pretty abysmal, and it could very well be that a corporation could do something like this. And mental health is definitely more of a less and less of a taboo topic, and more of an accepted aspect of overall health, which is absolutely the direction we need to be going. Depression, PTSD, all this, the wide gamut that is mental health isn't something to be ashamed about. It's simply a health issue. And in a health issue, we should be able to ask for help from health professionals without fear, judgment, and so on and so forth. And the thought of being stripped away from your life and, your job and your family and held against your will in a facility for, even for a day, much less a week, much less until they determine when you're fit to rejoin society, that is a fear that would potentially cause people to not seek that help out. Same thing as a fear of, if your insurance isn't going to cover it, then I might go bankrupt if I, call 911, even though my chest is feeling tight. There's all sorts of fears that are in play when it comes to seeking out health, and especially, again, not to politicize, but, strictly a fact. And I think that regardless of political affiliation, whatever, this is, I think, a fairly agreed upon fact within the United States is, with the current health system that we have in place as of 2018, there are trepidations and fears that go along with some people being able to ask for health help. And do we need a movie highlighting this and giving us one more reason to hesitate picking up that phone or being completely candid with the person that's in front of us, just because they happen to be wearing a white coat? Which further goes back and raises the question of, should horror movies, or any movies, or for that matter, any art medium, hold back out of fear of potentially delivering a message such as that? And honestly, I'll be totally, completely, candidly honest. I clicked record and I started talking. I have a few bullet points here, but for the most part, I have no idea where I'm heading with this. I just kind of laid out the groundwork there. I've already hit my bullet points of raising the questions. So now I guess I'll just talk about them. First of all, as far as the last thing I brought up, I think absolutely no. Horror movies, or art in general should not hold back. I don't think there's really any place for that. I am a strong believer in the freedom of speech and freedom of artistic expression. And if you're going to be saying, it should hold back, then I would say, who's making that judgment? How much do I trust them? No, art should not have shackles put on it. So, what level of responsibility lies within the message? Oh man, that's a good question. That's an interesting one just from a societal point of view. Um, Ultimately, I think it lies within uh, the audience and knowing the difference between reality and fiction. But at the same time, again, this is me not knowing where I'm going with this. Um, the audience that is potentially at risk for misinterpreting the message of this movie are potentially the ones that might have difficulty telling reality from fantasy, at least within the context of severely gray areas, especially with a movie such as this that is fairly firmly grounded in reality and is possible. Um, so, all I'll say is while I was watching the movie, I was thinking to myself of times that I have visited therapists, and I was asked the question, have you have you had suicidal thoughts? And honestly, I said yes. And then they asked, have you, with these thoughts, have you thought of any specific method in which you would do this? And I had to answer honestly, and I said yes. And then they said the last one, which is, did you make any move, either actively or passively, to act upon that thought? And answering honestly, I said no. And then it was dropped, which is pretty much the state in which the character went through, and she wound up getting put away. That was enough for them to believe that she was a threat to herself, or at the very least, on the surface, to collect the insurance money. So it struck a chord with me. I mean, this was something that I have been asked and something that I have answered and something that I went through, but without the consequences that she did. So it's potentially something that I may face down in my future. If I visit a therapist again, then I may be asked those questions again. And would I guess let me put it this way. If I were to be asked those questions again for the rest of my life, I think if I ever got to that third question again, I would, well, honestly, the second question. Yeah, okay. If I ever got to the second question again, do you have suicidal thoughts? No. Or yes. Do you think of any specific way? At that point, would my brain go back to this movie? I would say yes. Would that influence my answer? I would hope not. I don't think it would. I would still attempt to be honest in any way I could with any mental health professional. And I think that that's the healthy response. Is this was a movie, this was a fictional storyline, and if you are seeking out the help of health professionals, be it mental, physical, whatever, you should always be as honest as possible. I am a strong believer in only answering the questions that I am asked directly and concisely. I don't really go into long stories as far as, if they ask me, have I ever done drugs? I would, answer it quickly. And, if they want to know more, they'll ask more. I'm not going to go into my entire life history with that. But I also answer honestly, and because ultimately what I feel like is they are there to troubleshoot and find the source of a problem and find the best solution to address that problem. And the more information they have, the better they would be able to address that. The more accurate information they have. I don't want to be giving any kind of dishonest answer and receiving a subpar level of treatment in direct response to that dishonest answer. I go to get help, and I want help. And the only way that I'm going to get that is through honesty with, and really hoping that the ethical backbone of the person that I'm seeking out is going to be very firmly represented there, as well as HIPAA and regulating bodies that are there to protect the doctor and the patient. So yeah. I don't have any answers. I don't have any easy answers on this one, other than I'm conflicted insofar as, yes, this movie, while I was watching it, did make me fear, not necessarily how I would interpret the message of this, but how the public or certain members of it might take this to a level of inhibiting themselves from truthful dialogue with their doctors. At the same time, I also don't believe that art should be holding back or censored or shy away from difficult questions such as this. So that's ultimately where I land, is somewhere in the I don't know category. But I thought it was at least worthy of discussion, at least worthy of some deep diving. And I think that should about do it for the time that we have. I would love to hear from you. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you find other points of this to be totally ridiculous, if you find points of this to be salient, I would really love to hear your thoughts and read your comments below. If you like the videos that you've been watching, if you like these reviews, I really encourage you to click subscribe. And other than that, I really, really, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for joining me and making me a part of your day. And I really look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.